So we've seen how that works. So we know this part. We understand. Hopefully that should be very clear. I mean, that was pretty bootleg, but I think it's clear, which is all I care about. Now we have to understand what the bite is. So we understand the conscience. Now what's the bite? The teeth in the bite. This is point 2. The teeth in the bite of conscience is the moral law. The teeth is the moral law. Conscience measures the value, this is a direct quote from Nietzsche, note 141, conscience measures the value of every action. Conscience measures, it's an assessment, it's a litmus. It measures the value of every action with regard to its conformity with the laws. I mean, what I said is exactly that, right? Conscience measures conformity, right? So it is sort of this sort of transmission, reception sort of discourse, right? It's the idea that the moral law says I ought to do X. I have, unbeknownst to me, Nietzsche would say, I have had the conscience, this notion of the conscience implanted, imposed in my mind via conformity, the laws, the rules, you know, sort of the way of conducting yourself in a proper and appropriate and moral manner, such that every time I find myself at a point where I need to make a decision, it's actually genius, right? The concept is super simple, but it's profoundly genius, right? What are the myriad actions that human beings can take? Let's distill those actions into sets and make rules for each one of those sets, so that I find myself in a particular circumstance and I say, oh wow, there's a rule for this, right? And without even trying to think about it, if I've been programmed, if the rules have been programmed in my conscience, then immediately it kicks in, right? It kicks in, oh yeah, I know I'm supposed to do this because the rule told me. And you think that it's you telling yourself, you lie to yourself, right? You lie to yourself and you think that, right, I'm not supposed to lie to this person because lying is bad, or I'm not supposed to have sex with this other person because I'm married and that's bad, or I'm not supposed to do X, Y, Z because it's bad, right? Well, Nietzsche would say, you thinking it's immoral isn't really a product of your own rational deliberation. You thinking it's immoral is a direct consequence of having received and accepted the conscience. And in effect, really, then, hopefully you can follow this because it's very complicated in a sense. In a sense, then, when you become a believer, you are agreeing to accept this constructed, designed conscience. Right? Nietzsche would say, he would say this, that to make a very sort of contemporary corollary, to become a religious devotee, or to be technical, a Christian, he would say a Christian, is analogous to the role that Cypher played. Right? Because if there is a reality and that reality is brutal, if that reality is survival of the fittest, if that reality is red in tooth and nail, and you can't deal with that and the difficulties in making rational deliberations based on that sort of immoralist stance, it's far easier to accept the chip, if you will, accept the conscience, accept the receiver, and just wait for the signals to come, right? It's much easier to say, okay, now I don't have to think. I don't have to make these hard, difficult choices and decisions. I don't have to both care for human beings but not overextend myself, right? It's a delicate balance, right? And a moralist isn't a psychopath who goes out killing people. That's not what it is. It's a delicate balance between charity in an authentic sense, bona fide, legitimate charity, and self-preservation, egoism, pride, right? Not too prideful, not too egoistic. It's a hard balance to make. It requires instantaneous and continuous rational deliberation. It's far easier, Nietzsche would say, to just pop the chip in. Oh, well, there's a law for that, and the law says I can't do it. But this circumstance, don't you think, no, the law says I can't do it, I can't do it. Right? So that's what Nietzsche's saying. He's saying, in a sense, if you were to think in terms of sort of, robotics or, just wireless information, very sort of basic stuff, you have agreed in becoming a devotee to receive the rules and regulations from an outside source. And those rules and regulation are, in effect, going to govern how you act in the world. And that's why the emphasis, again, I've been stressing for hours now, is on the act, right? The emphasis is on the act, but it really is the meaning that informs the act. And in a second, I'm going to take that even deeper. So that should be clear, right? So when we're talking about the bite and the bite of conscience, the bite is the moral law, and the conscience is the thing that has been fabricated. To make it even simpler so that you can remember this, the bite is the transmitter, the conscience is the receiver, if you will, right? To really get bootleg and ghetto fabulous, but I mean, you can't forget that, right? Oh, right, bite of conscience. Bite is transmitter, conscience is receiver. Bite tells you what to do. Conscience conforms to those rules and acts, right? You play RC cards or whatever, you transmit the information, go right, and the RC card has a receiver inside of it, and it goes right when you push it right, right? That's it. If you push right and it goes left, you think, oh wow, this RC car is defective. That example should be bona fide, super clear, hopefully. Right? So that's it. The bite of conscience, think of it in that terms. And then you just replace all that bootleg with technical, and technically speaking, the bite of conscience, at least at this level, we're going to take it a little deeper in a second, the bite of conscience is the relationship between the moral imperative and the conscience, which is a product of sort of an acceptance of the moral law by the devotee, right? So that's that. Okay, fair enough. 3. The conscience, this is page 40, the conscience is affected because of a failure to conform to the moral law. That is, the bite affects the conscience, right? In a failure to conform to the moral law, right? It's you can imagine if we identify ours. I can't get into freedom because the discourse on freedom would just take this way deep. So I recognize there's an obvious thing that's not being discussed here, which is freedom. But if the law says not to do it, and I do it, the law says to go this way, I go this way, you get a shot. Every time I tell the system to go this way, and it goes a different way, right? That bite, that bite, obviously, we should know now, is the judgment. It's the punishment. It's the rules and the regulations. It's the thou shalt. It's you will conform to the law, and if you don't, you will be judged, right? So the bite is the judgment that proceeds from a failure to conform to the law, right? So within the moral law is, and I've discussed this before, right? Within the moral law is the only way, and this is easy to understand, it wouldn't even make sense to have a moral law if there wasn't an account within the law to deal with people who don't conform to the law, right? So insofar as I say, the speed limit is 75 miles an hour, I can't just have the speed limit is 75 miles an hour. If I just say the speed limit is 75 miles an hour and I see somebody zoom by and there's the police officer and he doesn't do anything, then I'm going to be like, the speed limit has no value. It's only valuable insofar as there are punishments, judgments to reinforce the law. Similarly, that system of punishment and judgment is the teeth to the law, right? So it's not just the teeth, because you can't have the teeth without the law. It's not just the law, because the law without the teeth, law without judgment, isn't a law. It has no value. It is the combination of the law and the ability to punish as informed by the law, to be technical. And I hope that wasn't too deep, right? I think the example of the speed limit is a good example, right? Just saying 75 miles an hour is ridiculous if there isn't a means to impose people who break the law. If you don't have anything that says the law is 75 miles an hour and you ticket somebody who's going 76, you're like, I didn't know. So you can't just have all teeth, you can't just have all law, it's the combination of teeth and law. It's to be technical, it's the combination of the moral imperative and the ability to impose punishment based on a failure to conform to the law, to be technical. That's what it is.